Hello, my friends. Welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads, and this is another edition of Friday Reads. And I've got so many books, I'm actually splitting this into two videos, which you'll get more about in just a sec. I think my favorite book this week was this collection of poetry, Gospel of Breaking by Jillian Christmas. And this won the Dane Ogilvy LGBTQ2S Emerging Writers Award from the Writers Trust in 2021. Very deserving. Jillian Christmas has Tobagan heritage, and she's Canadian, born and grew up in Canada. And this collection, it's just full of so many great poems like Black Feminist. There's one called Clean Up in Aisle 9 that really gave me the feeling of what it's like to have an anxiety attack in Home Depot. Quite a number of these poems are about mental health. There's one about to the person who stole her bicycle. She has great titles for her poems. This one is The Woman is Made of Eyes, and she got a tornado running up her spine. Anyway, it's all fabulous. And it was the pick for this month's Lesbian Plus book club. We had our book club on Monday. Everybody liked this book. And I also read from it at our monthly literary salon that we have on the first Wednesday of the month. So highly, highly recommend The Gospel of Breaking. One of her poems called Sidecar talks about the patron saint of the urgent runaway. You fashioned a highway while I was making plans for a cliff. And I think that's a pretty good lead-in to this whole stack of books that I'm actually going to save for International Women's Day, which is March 8th. And these books also fit into the Her Story-a-thon, a readathon that is new this year, I think. Brittany of Literarily Smitten and Charlotte of Coiny Reads are doing this. They've got a whole bunch of great prompts, and I will talk more about that on March 8th. In the UK and in the US, March is Women's History Month, but we don't celebrate that in Canada. We wait till October for Women's History Month because that's when we have Persons Day on October 19th, which is when women were declared to be persons under the law. So anyway, International Women's Day, watch for these next week. And I'll just show you the titles I'll be talking about. The Little Book of Feminist Saints by Julia Pierpont, illustrated by Manjit Thapp, T-H-A-P-P, Thapp, yes. And so for each saint, there is just one illustration and one page of text. That one was Benazir Bhutto, speaking of patron saints. And I found that was fun. This was even more fun. Brazen. It's translated from French. The author is Penelope Bagieu. Rebel Ladies Who Rocked the World. And they're both similar in style. in that it's a whole bunch of different women that we can be proud of. But this one is in graphic novel format, and so there's a little more to each story, plus more humor. And then I have a whole bunch of picture books, picture book biographies. Idia of the Benin Kingdom, and this one is by Ekiuwa Aire. So that is present day Nigeria. And Njinga of Ndongo and Matamba, same author, different illustrator. That is set in what is now Angola. This one is about a Jamaican poet, Louise Bennett Coverley. It's called Likkle Miss Lou. It's written by Nadia Hohn. And this one, Meet Viola Desmond, is about Canadian trailblazer for racial equality in Canada. Viola Desmond is lived in Nova Scotia. And this one is by Elizabeth MacLeod. And A Library for Juana, Sor Juana Inez. A little bit of her life stories in here. And last of all, kind of disappointing, The Flower Diary by Molly Peacock. This one, the subtitle is In Which Mary Heister Reed Paints, Travels, Marries, and Opens a Door. I had many thoughts, as you can see by my little flags in there. More about that in a few days. So, next up, I have a translation from Chinese. This is The Membranes. Cat's tail in the way. Membranes by Chita Wei, translated by Aire, Larissa, Heinrich. And the translator, he's got a quite a long afterword about Taipei queer punk literature, and also about the book itself, which I found quite helpful. And it probably would be also helpful for me to participate in the discussion, because the reason I picked this up is a read-along that Jen the librarian started, and now Greg of Supposedly Fun has also joined in to assist her with this. And it is the LGBTQ in Translation read-along. And this is the pick for January, February. Right? No. February, March. This is a pick for February and March. The next one, there's still voting going on to see which book will be chosen, and so I will link to Greg of Supposedly Fun, where you can vote on which book, if you want to join in, which book will be read for April and May. So, what is the story? Well, it's queer, science fiction. There's themes of a cyborg, and it's about Momo, who's a dermacare technician, and everybody is living pretty much in a city under the ocean, because the planet at this point is not very habitable. And storytelling is really important in this book. Another queer science fiction, Pixels of You. This one has got, sorry about the, should see if the inside has got a better, not so glossy. Is that better? Yeah, a little bit. So there's 3 creators of this graphic novel. Ananth Hirsch, who is Indian American, and Yuko Ota, who is Japanese American. They did the writing. And J.R. Doyle, who is Indonesian American, did the illustrations. So the illustrations are quite manga-like, and there's lots of pink and purple. The 2 main characters that you see here, Fawn, who is she's an android who is human presenting, unlike her parents, who look just like robots. And then Indira, who is South Asian, and she has a cybernetic eye that is giving her troubles. So anyway, the 2 of them are both photographers, and they're both interns at a gallery in a sort of future New York City. And Indira is quite prickly, and Fawn is kind of insecure. It's a quiet sort of story about how, although they initially butt heads, it develops into much more of a relationship between the 2 of them. And more science fiction graphic novel. So this is volume 2 of Descender, and it is called, this volume is called, what? Machine Moon. So, war between robots and humans, and this is interstellar. There's a whole bunch of inhabited planets. And it's written by a Canadian, Jeff Lemire, and illustrated by a Vietnamese American named Dustin Nguyen, Dustin Nguyen. And his art is beautiful watercolor. You can see the texture, I hope, on the paper. Telsa's a great character with her, she's a Samsonian, I think. There again, just very delicate art. And a page-turning story. I think I read volume 1 last week, and I am definitely moving on to volume 3 soon, because I really liked it. All right, audiobooks. I listened to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And I thought it was okay. This is the second book that I've read by V.E. Schwab, and I would say her writing just isn't for me, even though I was interested enough to listen to the whole thing. The audiobook is read by Julia Whalen. So it's about a young woman who basically makes a Faustian bargain in the 1700s in France. And we see her life over 300 years because she doesn't age. And the best thing about this book is bisexual representation. And the one of the blurbs for the book says that it compares it to Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, which I loved, and The Time Traveler's Wife, which I did not like. So it's interesting that this one was this kind of in the middle between those two. Just wanted to give you an example about what I didn't like about her writing. I guess too much melodrama, and also I can't tell you how many times the main character had something, she felt something break inside of her, or she felt something crack inside of her. Yeah. It's too much of a muchness on that, I think. I also listened to a nonfiction audiobook called How We Eat by Paco Underhill, and the subtitle is The Brave New World of Food and Drink. So Underhill does market research in grocery stores, and I mean, we all have to eat. Stuff about food is interesting to me. He has a very conversational sort of style. So for example, this is one section where he says, many of the really cool futuristic sounding packaging materials are still being invented. Lots will be made from plant matter that can be repurposed at home, boxes and bottles that you throw into your compost heap. Wait, you don't have a compost heap? That will change too. So, along those lines. He talked about the most popular frozen foods. The 5 most popular frozen foods in a grocery store are ice cream, potatoes. That one raised my eyes because I can't think if I've ever bought frozen potatoes. But anyway, convenience dinners, don't buy those either. Breakfast, and then this one totally stumped me because he said, think Jimmy Dean, and I don't know who Jimmy Dean is. I had to look that up. And the 5th one is pizza. So, just lots of fascinating stuff about what's happening now with our food system and with online ordering and changes in growing, like vertical hydroponics and hydroponics right at a grocery store, and using parking lot of a grocery store for growing food, that kind of thing. And lastly, another audiobook, and this one was excellent. It is, and actually fulfills middle grade March as well. That is a readathon that several booktubers are doing. Amanda of Curly Reader is one of them. And so the audiobook is called The Last Cuentista, and it is by Donna Barba Higuera. And it won the Newbery Award, and it won the Burra Belpré Author Award. So it is about 12-year-old Pena, who has vision impairment, and what she wants to be is a storyteller. But there's a lot happening in her life because I think it's set in 2061. A comet has been knocked off course and is heading straight for Earth. And so there are these generation spaceships that are leaving, and she and her family are on one of them. All right, so you fast forward 300 years later, you know, they get to the planet, and Petra, I think, did I say she's only 12 years old? She comes out of stasis, and it seems like she is the only one who remembers the planet Earth. There are dastardly things going on, so yeah, dystopian middle grade. And I only had about an hour and a half left, And I started listening to it when I woke up in the wee hours, and then I couldn't stop listening until I was totally finished. So I'm a little tired now. So her stories that she draws on, that the character Petra draws on, and I guess the author draws on, come from Mexican folklore, and that is the author's heritage. I think Higuera is of mixed heritage. She lives in Washington State. Actually, the author is an optometrist. So, yeah, I think it's kind of cool that her character has a vision impairment. But an interesting tie-in is that I am planning to read this, The Sea-Ringed World, which is a collection of sacred stories from the Americas. And the Mexican Nahua stories are in here, as well as a bunch of other indigenous groups. And there's one book, well, books are really important in La Cuentista as well. So there's storytelling, and there's also books, like the literary heritage of the planet Earth, basically, and how important stories are to us as a human species. So that kind of ties back to the membranes as well. But there is one physical book that is brought along by Petra's little brother, and it is a real book that I want to get my hands on. It's a picture book by Eugenie Morales. She has written a whole bunch of books, but this particular one is called Dreamer, and it is the author's autobiography. So it's an immigrant story. And again, that really ties into the situation in the novel The Last Cuentista, since they're immigrating to a new planet. So that is my Friday reads. I have a little bit of time to talk about what's up next for me. I'm actually partway into the Mabinogion, the Welsh traditional stories for Duathon, that Welsh literature readathon that's started by Paula Bardell Headley. And I'm also listening to an audiobook about insects, Silent Earth, Averting the Insect Apocalypse. That one's by Dave Goulson. And next up, I'm planning to listen to Spineless by Julie Burwald. That is for the Book Naturalist Club, book club, hosted by Heidi of My Reading Life and Doris of Aldi Books. And also, I've got out, I mentioned I was on the waiting list. Well, I've got it now. The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk. So I am going to start that for March of the Mammoths. And Jason of Old Blues Chapter and Verse is one of the hosts for that readathon. So many readathons. Well, let me know if you have read any of these, and if you're participating in any of these readathons and what you're reading for those. And please come back for my International Women's Day video reading about books related to women's history for Her Storyathon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.